And joining us now on the Unpacking It podcast is former Pro Bowl center for the Buffalo Bills. He's a former Louisville Cardinal, and now he's an ACC Network analyst and Buffalo Bills radio color commentator. He's also the host of What's Next, a podcast that interviews guys all about just impact and inspiring people. And he played 9 seasons in the NFL. He retired after the 2017 season. We are joined by Eric right now. Eric, great to have you on the show. How are you?
I'm doing great. It's an honor to be on this podcast, and I appreciate the invite.
Absolutely. Well, we're fired up to have you. And first off, let's talk just about the fall. And it is football season. It looks like we're going to get football. But how are you feeling about kind of how the setup is and this idea that we should have ACC, SEC, but not Big Ten, Pac-12? Looks like the NFL season's happening. How are you feeling about it all?
You know, for me, with my job with the ACC and, you guys based in Charlotte, you get a lot of the same information I'm getting. So right now there's some schools that are really struggling with some cases, but they're delaying their games so that they can still get those games in. And that's a great sign that they're willing to be flexible on the schedule, because they may have to be flexible on the schedule this year. It may extend out a few more weeks based upon scheduling conflicts with cases arising. But when it comes to college football, and all the people that I've talked to, administrations within the ACC, we all honestly think that it is a safer environment. It's a safer situation for these college students, these college athletes, to be back in school where they're getting all the testing, all the nutrition. If a guy tests positive, he's not even allowed in the building. They quarantine anyone he even came in contact with within a 6-foot radius, even if they get negative tests. You put all these college kids at home right now, are they truly going to be going through these measures? Maybe. I know I wouldn't. And I felt like I was a pretty mature 18 to 22-year-old. And so I think it's best for them to be on campus and playing. I understand there's a lot of liability at stake, and that's where conferences like the Big Ten, Pac-12, and so many other schools have bowed out. There's also a lot of financial implications that come with this as well, with all of the testing and measures that a lot of schools couldn't afford. But I'm hoping for a college football season. I think it'd be a great respite through all this tough time that we've been going through between this, the social issues as well. It'd be great to have college football here, and it would be great to have the NFL. NFL is a different animal. You're talking about over $8 billion in TV contracts out there that I think they're going to go after. But I'll tell you this, we're about 3 weeks away from the start of the season as we're recording this, and it sure doesn't feel like we're 3 weeks away. And a lot of that's because of the preseason not being played this year. But man, it does not feel like football is within a couple weeks in college football and 3 weeks in the NFL.
You're right. And I think for a lot of fans too, there's a sense of hesitation to be fully excited about the season because we're afraid, are they going to take it away at any moment? So I've sensed that from guys too. But I think overall, we're all just so excited about the possibility of some level of normalcy to think, hey, Saturday at noon when I turn on the TV, there's going to be football. Well, it won't be the Big Ten, but we'll get some football. And then Sunday at 1, we'll have the NFL. So I know I'm rooting for that for sure. Well, speaking of, everything going on in the world, and 2020 has just been such a unique year for you. In what ways have you been challenged or impacted? And even how has your faith maybe grown or been challenged throughout this year for you?
Yeah, let me start off by saying that my family's been healthy. My loved ones have been healthy through this time, and I'm extremely thankful for that. So I'll preface any complaints that I make from here on out, or anything that sounds like complaining. I'll preface it by saying we're extremely blessed to be in the financial situation we're in, the health situation we're in. We've spent a lot more time together. I'll say that. I'm generally on a lot of planes. I had 3 spring games to call in a row. In the prior weekends, I had a trip with just me and my wife. We had a trip with our family. And on the front end of that, I had a golf trip for March Madness out to Las Vegas. That was going to be, for a golf fan like myself, we were playing 3 top 100 courses in 2 days, and it was going to be pretty special. But I say all that, that was 6 weekends in a row I was scheduled to be gone. the fact that I got stuck in Louisville through that time, not hopping on planes, that was so much more time I got to spend with my family. And as long as I internalized it like that and tried to wake up each morning with an attitude of gratitude and say, God, thank you for the position I am in. God, thank you for the people you've blessed me with in my life, my gorgeous, amazing wife, my kids, everything you've blessed me with. My attitude was so much better than if the first thing that hit my brain in the morning was thinking what we could have been doing. And that's not a correct posture. Those times will hopefully come back. And if they don't, it is what it is. We try to make the most of those times. But I say all that, when you're in the broadcast industry and, I've only got, 6 months of work under my belt, those were 3 spring games for ESPN. I was really looking forward to that. That was a resume builder. This preseason for the Bills, those were resume builders for me that I'm missing out on. And so, yes, I'm missing these times. There were so many things canceled. I live in Louisville, Kentucky. The Kentucky Derby was already postponed. Now it's no fans at all. We have a lot of crazy times going on in our city with Breonna Taylor situation going on with that happening in Louisville. And so there's a lot of unrest in the city, and we continually pray that something good will come from this. And a lot of it's so tough to see at times, but we know that God works for the good of those who have been called according to his purpose and love him. So if we keep the faith, like what good can come from this? It's easy for you to say when you're not a family member or something, but if Breonna's life can bring about so much change in this world, changes in perspective, changes in attitude to bring a country together as opposed to tear it apart, then her purpose was served. And that's me thinking out loud and trying to make just of a situation that's pretty awful for so many around this country right now.
Absolutely. And yeah, appreciate you sharing all that. And for you, as far as getting into broadcasting and needing those reps that you weren't able to get makes it tough. But thankfully you do have this opportunity to work with the ACC Network, to work with the Buffalo Bills. And so I'm curious just how you ended up deciding that was the direction you wanted to go following your retirement in the NFL. And we'll go back to the kind of how you retired and all that in a little bit, but specifically on the broadcasting side, how did you end up going that direction?
Yeah, we'll get to it, but my career ended abruptly. I was not prepared for my career to be ending when it did. And I did always live by, yes, I want to have a foundation outside of football that involved my family, my faith, my friends. I wanted strong values, things I cared about outside of football, that my identity wasn't a football player. But I always felt like those that tried to pursue careers while they were still playing football, well, it ended their football career a little quicker than they wanted to, because you have to be all in when you're talking about, you have 32 teams. A guy like me who played center, there's only 32 starting centers in the NFL, and some guys play for 15 years. So do the math. That's what, 1 or 2 guys a year that maybe sticks in the NFL at center. And so for me, I'm all in on ball. And so for me, when I got out, it was natural for me to want to stay around football. I had some national media members reach out to me who I had been really cordial with and tried to be, just friendly with over the years. I understand they're trying to do a job, but they appreciate when you treat them with some respect. And they reached out to me, hey, if you ever need anything in this business, ever want to give it a shot, let me know. And so I reached out to them and was able to call one game my first year out for Fox. It was Iowa State, Kansas State, and really enjoyed it. Really enjoyed being back around ball, talking to coaches, even the production meetings and everything else that I'm sure longtime broadcasters kind of get tired of. It was fun for me to do those things. So it's been a fun transition to that side of the game now.
And the opportunity to do college and NFL is unique and rare, because most guys kind of focus on one. So how do you prepare for both, keep up with both, and why did you ultimately decide that you wanted to do both versus focusing in on one level of football versus two?
Yeah, the preparation can be tough, especially for the college game, because you could have 2 teams that you might not be able to name a single player on either team. Especially an early season game, you get an unfamiliar ACC team. playing maybe a 1AA school. We had a couple 1AA schools last year, FCS schools last year. And, I couldn't name a single person on Furman going into the game. They ended up giving Virginia Tech a run for their money. But, you get a game like that, and it takes a lot of prep work. Luckily for me with the NFL side, the Bills are one of my teams every week. And so I know that team. And with me just being so recently removed from the NFL, a lot of these coaches I played against or played for or played in their schemes. And then a lot of the players I played against or know personally. So it becomes a lot easier to prepare for the NFL side. But they both kind of serve a different purpose. I'm doing TV with college, so I'm learning that aspect of things. I'm forced to develop certain skills there. And then with the radio side, you're forced to develop a totally different set of skills. And we'll see where I end up in this whole business. But I don't really do anything halfway. So when I got into broadcasting and I had the opportunity, you asked how the opportunity came about, I signed on with ACC Network and then got offered the Bills gig. And those NFL color commentators for the radio, they're generally alumni from the team, and they generally don't leave. No. And the guy who had my job before me was 15 or 16 years. And so I felt like if I skipped it, I might not ever get the shot again. And so it made sense for me to take them both, even though it'd be a lot of work for the fall. My family was used to me working a lot in the fall, so it was an easy transition as a family. And honestly, I felt like if I could do both, then I'm getting development within the business at twice as fast as someone who's just doing one or the other.
Man, no, that's awesome, and I'm happy for you and excited to hear you, see you, and all that kind of thing this fall. And let's go back though to the end of your NFL career, because it's great to hear what you're doing now and making that transition. And for many guys, it's tough to figure out what to do next. And so for you to be able to do that is neat, but it doesn't mean that it wasn't difficult saying goodbye to the NFL, and especially with a neck injury like you were dealing with. And so, here on this show, we love talking faith and personal side of things. And so can you take us into what that experience was like, knowing that you needed to move on and say goodbye to the NFL, but not necessarily in your timing when it took place? So what was that experience like for you?
Yeah, quickly, the 2017 season, the Bills break a 17-year playoff drought. That's my 9th season in the league, all with the Buffalo Bills. I was a former first-round draft pick, and I just signed my second contract extension with the team before the 2017 season. So I'm very secure in my job in Buffalo. I'm the only player that played 100% of the snaps for the Bills that year. And after our playoff game, I found out in our exit physical that I had the neck issue, which ultimately I find out while we're in the delivery room 3 days later waiting for the birth of our son, that my career is over 50 minutes before he's born. So that was a tough time. We think we're trying to figure out how we get a newborn and a 2-year-old down to the Pro Bowl in 3 weeks. And instead we're trying to figure out how to tell our families and make an announcement in Buffalo that my career is over. And no one really knew about it, so it was tough to even bring up. So that was a trying time. And honestly, it shook me pretty good. We never wavered in our faith. We've always had, I think it's times like those when having really strong Christian buddies is important, because you're getting the word poured onto you as opposed to you necessarily even having to go seek it out in those moments. So many people were pouring into us at that time that it made it easy to rely on your faith. But there was some anxiety that came from that, which I never experienced in my life. Prior to that, I always knew, man, I want to be a great husband, a great dad, a great friend, Christian, and all that. But I want to be the best center in the NFL, period. So each morning I woke up with a purpose outside of the probably more important things, but career-wise, I knew exactly what I wanted to do. Well, then all these possibilities open up. Do you want to do this? Do you want to do that? Should you do nothing? We could maintain our current financial situation in Louisville for the rest of our lives. Do you just sit around and play golf for the rest of your life? And I knew that wouldn't be fulfilling, but after being a stay-at-home dad for a while, I truly appreciate what stay-at-home moms do a whole lot more. And there was a couple verses that I just had to cling on to, and it was Jeremiah 29:11, and that becomes so overused at times. for I know the plans I have for you, plans to prosper you, not harm you, it can be overused by so many until you're at a time like that.
Yeah.
And you're thinking, all right, God, your plan is bigger than my plan, it's better than my plan. And then in Philippians, where it says, do not be anxious about anything, but in all situations, through prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your request to God. And it was the with thanksgiving that I truly had to try and cling on to. Like, okay, God, I wanted to be playing football, but thank you for me sitting in my house in Louisville right now at 5:30 in the morning, not knowing what to do because I'm getting up like I'm still a ball player. And but thank you for this. I'm not going to be anxious, but like, where are you putting me here? And so it was a humbling time. It was a trying time, but I felt like our family got stronger, and there's so many unbelievable blessings that came from it with the timing. And I ended up not needing a surgery on my neck yet. I may down the road, but at C2, C3, that's paraplegia and loss of respiratory function. I had a disc sitting into my spinal cord when I finally saw the MRI. Like, I could have been laid out on a field and lost my ability to breathe and all of my limbs. I had a brother who passed when he was 11, and he was born with severe cerebral palsy. I saw what it looked like to not be able to breathe on your own, to not be able to walk and control your motor functions. Like, I saw that firsthand. And so to be able to see that MRI and be able to walk away from the game and still function and be active is a blessing. And that's the posture I've chosen to take.
Man, that's encouraging and inspiring. And I love your choice of words, pouring on the word, that your buddies were pouring the word on you and allowing it to soak in. And yeah, I love that. I just love that illustration. That's cool to hear. And to your point, the importance of having those kind of guys in your circle. I talk about it a lot on this show because I find it to be so important, and you can't value it enough. Especially when you go through those tough times, and you don't know when those tough times are going to come. So you got to build those relationships always. So it's ongoing. And so I guess along that same topic, how do you now take some of the brotherhood that was experienced within an NFL locker room, where in many ways it's built in, there's kind of natural fellowship, whether it's casual teammates or sometimes deeper as well. How do you keep that going now that you're out of the NFL? And for those of us that aren't experiencing a locker room either, how do we cultivate that at this point in our life?
There's no way of replicating an NFL locker room. And as guys leave the game, you don't miss the Monday morning feeling. You don't miss training camp practices. You don't miss all the time you spend away from your family. You don't miss all of those times. You miss the times around the guys. You miss celebrating wins. You miss cracking jokes on each other, because when you spend 80 hours a week together, you become like brothers, like you said. And so you can't replicate that. You appreciate it for what it was. This was told to me. You appreciate that for what it was. And when you get together with those guys again, you reminisce on those times and you appreciate that time. But there's always going to be changes in life. And so now I'm involved in a couple different men's groups. I belong to Southeast Christian Church here in Louisville. And so I'm involved in a couple different men's groups there. Try and have as many, as you're talking about, just authentic male relationships that, buddies that can check me at different times. And, I essentially became a 32-year-old entry-level worker in the broadcast business, but it could have been a number of different businesses. And I need some accountability at times, like, hey, no, in this business, and when you're hopping into the real world here's what you need to do. But then vice versa. Hey, how's your family doing? How's your relationship with your wife? Are you getting in the word first thing in the morning? All the things that I want to be held accountable to. When you get some real friends that do that for you, man, it's as good as gold.
Amen. No, I love that. And I'm right there with you. And it takes intentionality and effort and cultivating. So it doesn't just, happen. You don't roll out of bed and it happens. You got to be a friend, and you got to be, what you need. You got to be that to other guys as well, which is key. Well, we got to talk a little bit more football, and I've got to ask you about both kind of teams that you're connected to, and we'll start with Louisville, because as you can see, I've got my App State flag behind me. And of course, Louisville stole our great coach Scott Satterfield and ended up having a tremendous first season in Louisville. And so I was sad to see him go, but excited for all that he's been able to accomplish quickly at Louisville. But what have you seen as far as the impact that he's made, and how was he able to have such a quick impact?
Yeah, well, first off, we thank you for him, and what a blessing he is. He lives, I guess, 6 doors down from me in my neighborhood. My wife lets his dogs out when they go on road trips and stuff. So,
Awesome.
we've gotten close with the Satterfields, and they're a tremendous family, first and foremost. And when he came to Louisville, the cupboard wasn't completely bare from a talent perspective, but they were a 2-10 football team, statistically bottom 5, if not the worst defense in college football, and really no confidence at all. If they gave up 50 points to Notre Dame to start the season last year, I always joke that Scott Satterfield's name would be on it, but it'd been the most consecutive 50-point games given up in NCAA history. And so he inherited a group that lacked confidence, lacked trust in the coaches, and lacked a number of things. And from the get-go, he wanted them to compete, to have fun, to trust the coaches. So they all came to the coaches' houses for meals. They met their families. They poured into these kids. They told them they loved them. And it sounds cheesy until you watch Clemson, who's the top 2 program in the country right now, and Dabo's kind of doing the exact same things with his staff. And so it's kind of cut from that model that love your players. When you show them love, they will want to play harder for you, as long as there is a certain level of accountability, because you always have to keep in mind these are 18 to 22-year-olds, and we could all think back to our 18 to 22-year-old selves. If you give us too much, we're going to take it. But he's done a phenomenal job. I'm excited about the season and what they bring to the table. With the realignment of the schedule, we actually dropped Clemson for the first time since we've been in the ACC. Every other year, we play them every year. So this could be a year that Louisville can make a run at the ACC championship game.
I love it. I'll be pulling for him for sure. And that's great to hear. And we're sad he's gone, but yeah, he landed at a good spot, and he brought a lot of app guys with him too. So that's cool that there's a little piece of that culture at Louisville, which we love. And so then the other team that you're connected to, of course, the Buffalo Bills, and doing a former player and radio analyst. And so Sean McDermott, he left the Panthers, which I'm in Charlotte, so former defensive coordinator, and has gone to Buffalo and really made, again, a huge impact, signs a huge contract extension, and Buffalo is bought in, and a lot of hype surrounding the Bills going into this season and excitement surrounding them. And so kind of a similar question, and you were playing when he got there, how did he kind of change things, and what was the key that McDermott brought to Buffalo that has made such a difference?
I'll just say that Sean McDermott's one of the most consistent people I've ever been around in my entire life. And the approach that he brings every single day to his life, he brings to coaching, which rubs off on the players. Him and Brandon Beane, who was the assistant GM in Charlotte for the Panthers, he comes up as well. They have a tremendous working relationship from head coach to GM, and that they both know exactly the type of guys they want to bring in. And they call it having their DNA. And it's not an exact blueprint, but essentially it's guys that work hard, they're accountable, they're enthusiastic, they love to play ball. And when you have that many guys like that on a team, then you can bring in a couple knuckleheads, and then they kind of form to the culture of the building, and you could take some chances on guys maybe in the draft or free agency. But what they've done rebuilding from a salary cap perspective, from a talent perspective, a depth perspective, has just been absolutely phenomenal, to where the Bills are set up for long-term success. And as well as anybody, being the fantasy football expert you are, a lot of the NFL comes down to quarterback play. And if Josh Allen can develop to be a top 6-7 starter in the NFL, you're talking about a team that has such a good defense and is so sound everywhere around him, that you're looking at a team that could be competing for the AFC Championship, the Super Bowl, every single year.
Yeah, and I've been thinking about him because he took a step forward last year. We saw tremendous growth. How big can that second step be? And, how much better can he get? Because part of me thinks, okay, maybe he's on the Ryan Tannehill level, kind of a similar style maybe of play. but can he exceed that? And to your point, become one of the top 10 quarterbacks in the league. It's gonna be fun to see. So we'll see.
Ryan Tannehill lit it up last year in Tennessee, and that shows you with a good offensive line in a run game what you can look like as a quarterback, where they didn't have either in Miami, and you saw what he looked like down there. Man, so much of the NFL for quarterbacks is the situation you're put in early in your career, because I always say in life it takes 4 seconds to make an impression and 4 years to change it. And it's similar with quarterbacks in the NFL. You draft a guy number 1 overall, you probably are a really bad team with really bad talent and at the skill positions and probably a bad offensive line. That's how you got the number 1 pick in the draft. That's how you were 1-15, 2-14. Well, now you stick a guy in there immediately. It's his first year with an offensive coordinator, first year in the NFL, and now you just want to make this huge opinion on him. I mean, Peyton Manning, I believe, led the league in interceptions his first year in the league.
Sounds right.
And then obviously goes on to the Hall of Fame career. Brady doesn't even start early in his career, and those are maybe the 2 greatest quarterbacks of all time, both top 5. It'd be hard to argue that they're both not top 5 quarterbacks of all time. So Josh Allen is now in year 3 in the same system. They've kept a lot of his familiar faces on the outside, but then they add Stephon Diggs, the number 1 receiver, comes over from the Vikings. And then all of the offensive line is back. One of their guards is getting pec surgery right now. He will be back. They added Brian Winters, the veteran guard from the Jets. You got a great offensive line in front of them. I look for there to be a jump going into year 3. I think it hurts them a little bit with a young quarterback and a new number 1 receiver that there wasn't OTAs. Yeah. And you're getting limited team reps even now with, you're not going to – they spent so much of this training camp doing routes on air and all that with the coronavirus stuff going on. But I love Josh. I just had him on my podcast. Yeah. Extremely likable young man. And I almost said kid because I tend to call like anybody under 25 a kid now. But if you stand next to Josh Allen at 6'5", 245, he sure doesn't feel like a kid.
No, and he's taking command of that offense. And speaking of fantasy, I've got Devin Singletary as my running back on my key fantasy team. So I'm hoping for a big year from him as well, because he showed great toward the end of the year. It really did.
Yeah, I do like that. And with them, they added Moss, a running back from Utah in the 4th round, I believe, who will take some carries from him. But Singletary's a guy who can catch the ball in the backfield. So if you're in a point per PPR league, you're getting a point every time you catch the ball out of the backfield, which as Josh needs to progress, it's less shots down the field and maybe a few more checkdowns. Maybe you get a few more catches at the running back position there. And then I believe he was 2nd in the league in yards per carry last year, right behind Lamar Jackson. Pretty strong company there.
I'd say so. And that's always an important number to me. I like guys that can get yardage and doesn't necessarily take a ton of carries to get there. So, so I love hearing that. Well, how are you doing on time? Do you have a few more minutes?
Yeah, I'm good.
We're a little over. So we got, you mentioned your own podcast, which I'd love to hear more about. It's called What's Next, and interviews that impact and inspire. What is your kind of heart behind it, goal behind the podcast?
Yeah, so when I originally started it, I had nothing going on in the broadcast world, but I wanted to get some content out there. And so my heart behind it is basically my kids are going to be listening to this stuff in a few years. And I want to interview people that I learn from, I'm inspired by. And I feel like if I do that and these interviews impact me, they'll impact listeners as well. It'll grow organically. And, I've gotten so many texts from people from the podcast about something that someone said that hit them at the right time. And that's how I know I'm not wasting my time with it. I also started doing that, and then all of a sudden started getting some job opportunities in the sports world that was able to produce some content. During this COVID time, it's allowed me to try and further sharpen my speaking skills, my interviewing skills, which when you're on the one side of the microphone for so long, at times it becomes hard to be on the other side of the microphone and actually carry an interview because you're so used to just answering the questions. So there was a lot of reasons why I wanted to get going. But as you've probably learned, the networking that comes from it is absolutely phenomenal. And I don't say that like I need to create a network to be the most powerful man in the world. It's amazing the connections. We were talking about Brian Tomey, the pastor at Crossroads Church. Well, he asked me if he could have the number of former Reds player. He's a Louisville grad, now plays for the Braves, Adam Duvall. I asked Adam Duvall if that was okay to connect them. Adam Duvall says, dude, when I was playing in Cincinnati, I was listening to him speak every single week, and we still listen to him down in Atlanta on his weekend messages. That would be an honor. And it's like little connections like that I feel like has become like almost a spider web of this like podcast game, and getting the opportunity to do this here today. If I didn't have my podcast, maybe we don't sit here today and do this. And who knows who's impacted in some little bit by one of the two of our words here today.
Amen. Absolutely. And I'm a big fan of connections and how God uses them for his purposes. And the people that we meet sometimes, years ago, we think, oh, why did I meet that person? And then years later, you realize why, or the person that they knew. And yeah, I've seen that with this podcast. And, even just the overlap of guys that we have on, or the different connections. Like in a couple of weeks, we're going to have Eric McClain on, who you work with at the ACC Network, who's an awesome guy and based in Charlotte. And so anyway, so those are the kind of things that take place, and it's fun. So the podcast world's great. My background's in radio, but I've gone all in on the podcast realm, and there's something special about it. So it's cool that you're right there in the mix and getting that experience as a host. So keep up the great work, and some really unique guests as well. Business guys, pastors, athletes. So encourage guys to check it out. It's called What's Next with Eric Wood. And Eric, final question. On your Twitter profile, you've got a proverb that you list, and it's 11:25. It says, a generous person will prosper. Whoever refreshes others will be refreshed. And just to kind of bring it full circle too, what you mentioned earlier that stood out to me, pouring the word on other guys, there's a refreshment there too. But why use that verse on your Twitter profile, and what does it mean to you?
For me as a family, we've thought hard about what we want to be known as a family, and we want to be generous, and we want to spread joy. We want to refresh others. My little girl, before she goes off to school, I'll say, what are you going to do today? She'll say, I'm making a great day. And I said, all right, what are you going to do? And she say, spread joy. And so just like we want to spread joy, we want to be joyful. We want to refresh others by us being around. And I just feel like we've been blessed with so much, possessions, but also with relationships, that we want to just be generous with others and be known for that. I used to have a proverb before that hard work brings prosperity, and talk, leads to nothing. And I was like, yeah, maybe we go a different direction and kind of think about it from a family perspective, what we want to be all about.
I love it. So I'll say it again. A generous person will prosper. Whoever refreshes others will be refreshed. So, yeah, that's an encouraging word. Well, Eric, man, really great to connect with you. Loved having you on the show, and appreciate you sharing your heart, a little bit of your story, and keep up the great work as an analyst and a podcast host.
Well, I appreciate that. You do a phenomenal job. New fan of the show. You do an excellent job bringing on phenomenal guests. I love what you're all about, connecting sports and faith. That's a strong hitter for me as well. So I truly appreciate it, Bryce.
Absolutely. Well, thanks, man. There's Eric Wood joining us here on the Unpacking It podcast.